tiny friends. Welcome back to TinyKeyHoleMinis. I'm Jolene, and today is going to be part 2 of the mummy in the coffin. I'm going to attempt something that I've never done before, and that's make some sort of structured diorama. So I am thinking of building this mummy an ancient crypt, only it's going to be the ruins of an ancient crypt. So this is just a recap on what the mummy looks like and the coffin. This project was quite challenging and I almost wanted to give up, but I continued on. I am up for challenges and I am excited and I am so happy that I continued to the end because I love the results. And you'll have to let me know what you all think in the comments below at the end. So I've put my feet in building structures but never really completed one. So today I'm going to use this styrofoam board. It's a bit of a stiff and hard styrofoam, and I have a few extra pieces. This was broken off, and I like the fact that it was broken off, so I'm going to utilize that. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with the extra piece, if I'm going to try and build some sort of a wall or break it down into pieces. But I have this square block that I'll be attaching here and use it as some sort of entryway into the crypt. I'm going to build a couple sets of steps with this little piece here, and the mummy will be placed somewhere inside. Okay, so I pulled out some salvaged recyclable pieces. These are cardboard pieces that usually come in appliance boxes like vacuum cleaners or something like that. And I thought that that would be perfect as old crypt walls. I really love the texture on the outside, and then when you turn it over, there's more of a smooth texture on the inside, and it kind of says to me ancient crypt walls, and they kind of look like mud or clay or some sorts. I love the fact that it has cubby spaces and shelves, so I'm going to utilize those, and I'm just going to break these pieces down into smaller pieces because I don't want whole wall pieces. I want it to look like the ruins and remains of what used to be, so there'll be broken spaces in between the pieces of the walls. Here I go into a new adventure that I'm going to learn lots from. I also have some of this old creepy cloth, and I just thought I'd show you some of the things that I might place inside. I've got this batch of old human bones that I made out of polymer clay. I didn't make them for this, but it turns out they're going to be perfect for this. I also have some old polymer stones that I created years and years ago, some pebbles, and some melty polymer candles that I've made years and years ago, and I've just been holding on to this stuff. So I thought that this would be perfect to finally get to use some of these things in a project. So I'm going to use some of this stuff and just place them around in the cubbies or on the shelves, and I just thought this would be perfect for this. I also purchased some resin skulls from Temu, and you get about 10 in a bag, and I'm pretty sure there's like 3 different molds that come in the bag. So if you want to purchase something like this off of Temu, you just want to make sure to thoroughly look through the different skulls because some of them look more realistic than others. So I'm going to start by gluing this styrofoam onto this board, and I have traced out the shape so that I can cut the excess off. Now, this was my first mistake, cutting this board. I realized later on that I didn't really have to cut it at all, and you'll see why, but I'm cutting the square base off as well that I'm going to need for that block. So when I realized that I did that, I just ended up gluing the square piece that I'm cutting right now onto that little square block. So proceeding on, I used my Gorilla Wood glue and I also used tacky glue to attach these two pieces together. This board was given to me, I was given three of them instead of being thrown away. And I said, I for sure will take them. And it's a really, really hard cardboard. It kind of reminds me of the same stuff that I used underneath the boards in the sewing room floor. Um, I'm pretty sure it is. It's kind of like that stiff backboard to a giant art pad or some sort of pad. It's super stiff, super thick, and it's really durable. So it's perfect as um, a base or some structure for a base. So I glued this piece on after cutting it off, and now I'm going to create a set of steps. After I created this set of steps, I decided to create a second set as well. So I'm just going to take this little piece and cut it down, and here I am trying to figure out why they're not fitting together the way I would like them to. And I realized that I cut the bottom a little bit too small, so I'm going to use the piece that I cut off and just glue it back on there, and that is going to fix that issue I'm having, and I like the way they look much better like this. So that's what I did. So here you can see where the two pieces are separated, and I really, really did not like that. So again, I have a solution for that, but right now I'm just trying to figure out a placement where I want to place this set of steps, and I decided that they fit really well on the broken side, so that's where they're going to go. Now I'm just going to play around and figure out how many pieces I'm going to use, where I'm going to put them, how I'm going to put them together. And at this time, I was trying to build some sort of archway to go over the platform. Um, but I ended up scratching that idea later on. So you'll see me playing with those pieces, but they're not going to be used. So this did take about 2 days to figure out how to place these pieces. They're kind of like, it's kind of like one big puzzle, and I just have to figure it out. So I cut down these pieces, and I decided on just using 3 of these smaller pieces that I've cut down. So now I am on to my solution, and I took another one of the boards and I just glued it underneath my styrofoam. So now I have 2 pieces of that board, and I ripped off that shiny gold paper so they would stick together. I went ahead and painted the base and added the second set of steps, and also broke away some of that styrofoam as well. I painted this base with a mixture of black acrylic and Mod Podge. And I am going to use some of these pieces because they kind of look like rubble. So I decided I'll use some of these as well. These are just broken bits of styrofoam. And as long as the fan don't blow them all away, I'll be able to use some of them in the diorama as well. Okay, so I have a big gap. As you can see, it looks like a little cliff, and I'm going to fill in some of this space with a little bit of aluminum foil because I don't want it to be just a straight drop off. I want it to kind of gradually come down as if it was breaking away, and the floor or the stones or whatnot are all crumbled and broken away. So I'm filling this in. I'm going to use some hot glue to attach it, and this was perfect because it just helped fill that space in, and then I can kind of have the floor there gradually breaking away. I'm really just trying to remember what I've learned from other miniature artists so that I can apply it to this diorama, since this is my very first diorama. I am going to use some damp ready mixed concrete patch to try and fill this in and make it look like stone. And I have to tell you, I love this stuff. I love working with it. It's super fun to work with, and it is very addicting. So again, this is the DAP Ready Mixed Concrete Patch. There's a lot of moisture to it, and it's easy to apply, and any type of texture you add to it just stays put. But because this is my first time using this stuff, I went ahead and mixed in some of my Gorilla wood glue as well. I don't know if I needed to do that, but I wanted to be extra safe. So I did use that and it worked out great. I feel like it just made it harder and definitely more secure. Again, not sure if I need to do this step, but I did it. Um, so once I got this all mixed up, I just started to apply it with the stick, and I'm just throwing it on there. I'm not trying to be really neat or, perfect about this. I started with the stick, and it's actually a chopstick that I'm using, but I started with that, and then, I got rid of that and just started using my fingers and thought it would be much easier to apply this stuff with my fingers. And actually, it's okay. It'll start to dry and you can just crumble it off and brush it off right into your little garbage can before you actually wash your hands, because you don't really want this stuff in your sink pipes. So it just brushes and crumbles off, and I was able to get almost all of it off my hands before I went and washed them. So I didn't mind using my hands to apply this. And I end up using this throughout the whole project to create that stone look. I'm not trying to smooth this out. You actually see me going in, and I go back and texturize all the parts where I feel like look too smooth, but I'm just using my fingers to add texture. And I'm going to go around the whole board and all around the edges so that it looks like one solid piece and you can't see the layers of material. So this is what I used for the stone look. And then I also use the Dry Deck spackling, not the lightweight spackling, but the regular spackling. I use that to attach the walls together to look like they were not separated, but they used to be one whole piece. I used the hot glue to attach the walls together, and then I went over the areas where they were connected with the Dry Deck spackling, which I really liked using that as well. Um, but I mainly use this stuff throughout the project, and I just love it. It's amazing. And I'm going to be using this more often for sure. This is more stiff, and once you put that texture in there, it just stays put, whereas the spackling is a little more softer, and it worked out better for the walls. I also use the spackling on the inside of the walls to cover up those connections as well, and the spackling looked more like mud or clay, so it worked out perfect for use of the walls, and this just worked out really well for the stone and the platform and the base. Okay, so now I'm going to go in and just apply a little bit to the broken parts of the styrofoam just to give it a more cohesive look and help it have a little more strength. Um, and I'm just using what I have left. So I decided, instead of throwing it away and wasting it, I will use it to fill in some of these areas to help make those look more realistic. For those bits of styrofoam, those broken bits, I just put them in a bowl and I added very little, very little of my black acrylic and Mod Podge mixture, and I'm just going to mix it all up, and then I'm going to spread them out on some wax paper so that they can dry. But I used very little because I don't want all this extra stuff all over the paper and attaching itself to these bits and pieces. So if I needed more, I could add more, but I started off with just a little tiny bit. And it worked out very well, and it was easier to get all these pieces out and lay them down to dry. And there's some tiny crumb pieces in here as well. So I wanted to make sure not to overdo it with that Mod Podge mixture. Okay, I'm going to take the same mixture and I'm going to begin to paint my walls, my little sections that I've chose. I'm going to do outside and inside. So these pieces are going to be completely covered. I'm going to paint all three pieces. And most people would probably attach their pieces to the base first before painting. And I feel like I'm kind of doing this backwards, but it was because um, I didn't know how I wanted to attach them, where I wanted to set them yet. I just knew that these were the three pieces that I wanted to use. I had a semi idea of how I wanted them to be placed, and I'm going to need to attach them with the concrete patch. So I end up doing the painting in sections, and I feel like it's kind of a little backwards or weird, but um, that's how this project worked out, because I'm adding things as I'm going, I'm taking away things as I'm going. So it was kind of necessary to do it this way. I really didn't have a sketched out plan. I didn't do a lot of research on old tombs. I looked at a few pictures and I got this big, brilliant idea and basically just dove headfirst into this. And I thought if I just played around with the pieces, the ideas would come, and that's basically what ended up happening. So I'm going to give each piece, including the base, a few layers of different colors. And right now, all this black sinking into all the nooks and crannies of the outside of the walls is really going to give it some good dimension and shadowing when I go apply the other colors. You're really going to be able to see all that texture that this cardboard stuff has. There was so much drying time and so much painting, and with the lack of experience of doing something like this before, really, really made me discouraged, and I almost walked away from this project and just quit. And I just took a few days off, and when I came back, it was more clear to me, and everything moved along so well, and I was able to complete the project within a few hours. So all that drying time and painting and waiting just tested my patience, because I just really had to pull myself out of the trenches of this tomb and conquer the beast of all that. So now I'm going to go in with my stampers, my daubers. These are Martha Stewart's. I was gifted a set of these, and I'm just going to use these to daub the next layer of color on here. And it's going to leave some of that black behind, which I want. But these come out of their cases. As you can see, that's an empty one because I used that one all up. And you can actually turn them over and use the other ends when one end is worn out. So that's what I do. Plus, you can pull them out to clean them. So I've got this pewter gray and a little bit of white, and I'm going to begin with um, adding a little bit of the white to the pewter gray, but it's still going to be on the darker side. I'm using the sponges because it's just going to add more texture to the floor and make it look more like stone. And with the layers of different blends of grays that I'm going to add, it should turn out pretty good. So let's see what happens. I don't want to cover the board completely, so I'm just going to dab around, leaving some of that black to show. So now I'm going to go in. This is what it basically looks like after it dries. I'm going to go in with a lighter shade of gray. I used the same colors. I just added more white, and I'm just adding some highlights around. I'm not going all over the whole board. I'm just going in some of the areas to bring out some more of that detail. And you can see what it's starting to look like with the blends of color. I'm using my finger to blend in some of those areas to make it look more older or worn out. And then if I dab too much, it helps just to blend it in a little bit with my finger. So on the top of the base, you can see a round circle imprint that was left behind by one of the cans I used to set on the base as the pieces were drying, and I'm going to take care of that, so we won't really see that circle ring anymore. But right now I'm going to go in and work on these little pieces while I have the gray out. I'm going to do the same exact thing to these pieces because these are supposed to be broken off of the stone, so they kind of have to have the same layer of paints so that they'll look like they're part of that stone. Okay, so here is a good look at what the base looks like. The floor is completely done. Um, I'm really happy with the way this looks, and I love, love, love that concrete. Um, there is a permanent circle, but that's going to go away soon. I don't mind all the marks on the floor. You won't see them as much. I used a thinner layer of concrete right here just to give it some texture and look like some sort of dirt or something. Um, but now I'm going to go in and begin painting the wall pieces. So I need to add their layers of colors, and they're going to get about 3 different layers of color. So I'm going to go in and do that. I'm going to place them down on the board the way I want them, and I'm going to trace them out so I know where they're going to sit, so I know exactly where to put the cement when it's time to attach them to the floor. Okay, I have most of the walls painted and you can get a nice view of what they're looking like. I ran out of my paint mixture, so I do have to mix up some more, and I'll show you what I'm using, what I'm mixing. I did write it down so I knew what combination of paints for each layer. Um, that I did think about doing because I knew I would not remember. So they're going to sit on the platform something like this. And I've got these 2 pieces attached. I used the hot glue and then I applied the spackling on it. And you really can't tell. That spackling looks just like the texture of the outside. So it was soft enough to try and recreate that texture, that same look. So that's why I chose to go with the spackling for the walls. So now I'm going to go in and mix up some of that paint. I'll show you what I used. Okay, so you can see here that there are several different colors making up the color of the wall or the aged look of the wall. And although I did love the color of these pieces as is, they were too flat, they had no dimension, and they had no age to them. So I'm going to go in and finish off painting the little part that I have left, and I just wanted to give you another look of what these walls actually are looking like, and I really love them. Oh my gosh. And I love how the deeper parts have the darker black in there. I really couldn't get in there as much anyways, and I just kept telling myself stop trying to get in there because it needs to be darker in there to give it more depth and make it look deeper. Okay, so the first layer of color was mixed with a deep ochre, cinnamon, and some brown. And I'm going for kind of like a mustard brown or a brown mustard color. And I figured if I did this color first, most of it would get covered up, but some of it would remain behind and look like kind of like the clay dirt, or I've seen clay and dirt that looked this color. So some of it will remain behind looking sort of like that clayish color or maybe some sort of staining. So this was the first layer that I began with. And it's not a very pretty color, but as you saw on the wall, most of it gets covered up, and I just thought it would add a little bit more to the texture and dimension of the colors. I'm kind of dry brushing, but not really, and I'm not really covering the black completely. I'm just slapping it on there in areas and places because I know that there's going to be more layers going on here that will cover up other parts of the black. So I'm just kind of throwing this on here as is. Okay, for my second layer, I'm mixing up kind of like a milk chocolate brown. So I'm just using brown and white. And once I get that milk chocolate color, maybe a little darker than a milk chocolate, I'm going to apply this as well. And I began using the sponge, but I gave that up and just started using the brush. I am still leaving some of that yellow to show, or that mustard brown to show. I'm trying not to cover all of it up completely, so that I have those different tones in there. But I'm going to give it one more layer after this. Okay, for my last layer, it's going to be for my highlighting, and I'm just adding more white to that milk chocolate color, creating an even lighter milk chocolate color. And I am using the sponge for this part because I'm just adding in some highlights, and I'm not covering it completely. I'm just going into some areas. Now, the sponge works better on the textured area because of the raised parts of that. Um, it doesn't work as much on the softer, on the smoother side. It doesn't leave as much texture on the smoother side, but again, I'm only going into certain areas. I'm not doing the whole thing, and I'm just doing some highlighting. Now this area here, I had to use the spackle to cover up a code that was stamped or embedded into the cardboard itself. So you can see when I go over the areas that do have spackling on them, you can see all the texture that comes out, and it kind of looks like the other side of this wall. But it still all works out really well because it still all looks like it's part of this wall, and that's the spackling. The Not the lightweight, but the dry decks regular spackling. I did have some of the lightweight, but I don't know if it was just too old or it just didn't have a lot of moisture. I've had it for a while, so it wasn't it was a little dried out. It wasn't dried out completely, but it just didn't have as much moisture in it to be pliable. So that's why I used the regular spackling, which was just as good. It was nice and soft and smooth, and it just created the same type of texture as the outer walls of this piece. Okay, so now it's time to attach these walls to the floor. And I'm bringing out the concrete, and I've got my wood glue. And again, I'm not sure if this is necessary, but I feel more secure using it. So I'm just going to go with it. Um, and I'm just eyeballing, I'm just adding it until it looks good. I'm going to mix it up really well, and then I'm going to begin to apply it onto the floorboard. Okay, I'm taking my white pencil and I'm just tracing around these pieces on the floorboard to have an idea of where to put the concrete. Since these have weird shapes to them, it will give me some sort of idea where to place the concrete. It doesn't have to be perfect because I'm going to be adding additional concrete for rubble and stuff like that. But this just helps me have an idea of what I need to fill in and what I don't want to fill in. So I'm just going to start applying a really good amount, and I'm being really generous with this. I want a lot of it so that it can actually kind of sink in there and get stuck inside. But even though I added the wood glue to the mixture, I'm going to add more wood glue on top of what I'm laying down. So I'm going to put this down, make sure I get a really good amount that I'm comfortable with, that I feel like it will actually, the piece will actually sink right in there and sit in there. So now I'm going to add some wood glue on top of it. And again, I don't know if this is necessary, but let me tell you, it is put and it is not going anywhere. So I felt really safe with knowing that the extra glue was here. So now I'm just setting these into place. I'm going to hold them down while I'm patting the cement all around and kind of smoothing it down to the floor. I will be adding more, but right now I'm just going in with my fingers just to smooth it down a little bit, just to blend it in a little more. I just want to fill in those gaps. I want to make sure that there's no gaps between the pieces and those are completely filled in. I don't mind if there's a gap here or there, a hole here or there, because that would be normal and that would really happen. But for the most part, these have got to be secured down. Okay, here you can see what it kind of looks like on the inside, and then I'm just going back in with my finger and tapping it along, and that's leaving some texture behind. Now I'm going, you can see I'm going to add the bigger piece that's actually going to take up two sides of this board. You can see how much I'm going to lay down. I'm laying more down on this side because it's a bigger piece and it has more curves and shapes to it. So I really have to lay a lot down, and I know it looks like a ridiculous amount, but trust me, it's perfect. And I do actually um, kind of do a dry fit where I don't press it down all the way, but before I add the glue, before I finish adding all of the concrete down, I'm going to take the wall and just kind of place it on top to make sure I'm adding the concrete correctly. It just helps because I did kind of get lost a little. My pencil mark kind of disappeared on me. So now I've added the glue, and now I am going to place this big piece down. I'm just going to adjust it right up to the edge where I want it to sit and make sure it's sitting where I need it to sit. And then I'm going to do the same thing with my finger. I'm going to smooth out the walls or the gaps, the connecting points, and then go ahead and add some texture. Okay, so this is what it's looking like, and I've already started adding additional concrete for added rubble. So I'm going to do that in some of the corners and nooks and crannies. I'm not going to do it around the whole thing, but some of the areas need to have that additional broken stone or wall. In this case, it's just going to be parts of the dirt and the stone that have broken up. So I'm going to go ahead and just throw it down and chunk it up and make it look like it's just rubble. I'm leaving all this to dry overnight just to be on the safe side. I really don't know how long it takes to dry, but I've left it to dry overnight. And in the meantime, I'm going in to dirty up and age up the skulls. Now I've already added a little bit of super glue and baking soda just to a few of them, and I'm going to go in with my Mod Podge and my chalk pastels and just add some dirt and make it look like they have been dug up or they've been laying in the ground, and so they're rotted with all that dirt that's left behind on them. I'm using a few different colors. I'm using black and brown, and I'm not doing this to all the skulls. I'm just going to do it to the ones that I added the super glue and the baking soda on. I'm going to do different things to the skulls so they don't all look the same, but they will all look aged. Okay, so originally I intended just to scatter the skulls around and place them around, and then, I've been watching these crafters make these real life-size skull walls, crypt walls, and I just thought this would be perfect opportunity to do that. So I added the concrete onto the tops of these two walls and embedded the skulls and bones in those areas, and I just thought that it looked really good, so I just decided to go with it. And you can see I did do different things with some of the skulls, but I thought this would be perfect to try this, and in a perfect project to try this. So I went with it. Now I'm going to paint them, and I am beginning with the same exact process as I did the walls because they have to match the walls. So I started with the black, and I'm doing small areas at a time because I need to go in and wipe off the bones and the skulls. Now I don't mind some of this paint um, staying on the bones and skulls because that's just going to add more to the age, but I want to wipe off most of it. So I'm doing it while it's still wet so that you can still see some of its natural colors or the natural aging that I've done to it. But the paint does add more age to them, so it's just a bonus. But I do this for every layer of color. And I'm just using a damp Q-tip with water, and then I'm using the dry side to go in behind it and kind of wipe it dry. Okay, so I've gone in and I've painted up all the fresh concrete that I added, and I'm in the process of adding its layers and colors. Now, you want to make sure if you're using this concrete stuff or something like this that's similar, you're using brushes that you really don't care about, because you're gonna ruin your brushes. So now I have 3 brushes that I can dedicate to my future uses with this concrete stuff, because they really tear your brushes up. But you can see how the color, the black and the different tones and shading has left all that texture and dimension. So I'm just gonna go in and finish this off. Okay, so all the painting is done. I'm going to go in with some chalk pastels. I have a blend of white, soft yellow, brown, and kind of like a sienna or a brick color. And I've just blended them all together to make some sand. And I'm doing this part first because it needs to be shook off. So I'm just going to go in with some Mod Podge and then just start laying this stuff down. And I realized that I should be laying the Mod Podge down on the bottom part first, because everything that I lay on the shelves just fall down to the floor, and then the Mod Podge will catch it. So after this corner, that's what I start doing. But I'm just scattering it around and putting in all the nooks and crannies on the shelves. I'm adding some creepy cloth with some hot glue. This is my favorite part. This is the fun part of adding all the fun details, finishing it off. I'm going in with some of those extra mummy bandage wraps that I had, and I'm just placing a few down. This one I just laid down dry, but the other 2 that I add, I actually dip them in the glue and water solution so that I can hang them and make them look more natural the way they're laid out. Now I'm going in with my stones, and I'm just building some piles, and I'm adding a lot of glue to keep these together, but I'm using my tacky glue, and I'm just scattering them randomly about and placing them around the floor, in and out, wherever I feel like they need to be. And this pile, you can see, has so much glue on it, it's just not staying together, but it finally does take hold. So I'm adding in a few of the rubble pieces, and I'm going to scatter those about as well. I did put some thought into this, but not a lot, because I imagined that these pieces would be scattered about everywhere and anywhere. I've walked through parking lots and old buildings that were decayed and broken down, and these pieces were just randomly everywhere and anywhere. So that's what I did with them. And now I'm adding in some skulls and some candles. I'm just going to place these candles about. Again, I'm not really thinking much of it. I'm putting very little thought into this. Right now, I'm just in the stress-free zone and just having fun with it. Okay, tiny friends, the last item I'm adding is my signature book. I'm going to put it back here behind the mummy so that the mummy can guard and protect it from even the bravest tomb raiders who might find this precious treasure and try to take it. So I hope you enjoyed this video today. If you have, please click that like button and let me know what you thought in the comments below. Okay, so I did a search for ancient mummy symbols and found this and thought it would be perfect to cover up that embedded circle imprint. So I'm just going to go ahead and paint that in by hand and take care of this really quickly. And I thought it would be perfect to add some sort of symbol up on this platform anyway, so it worked out really well.
Now this is a tale from the crypt. Fear not, my tiny friends, as we enter into the tomb of the mummy. The mummy has risen from the dead, calling all monsters to join in the festivities of Halloween.
Move to the groove. Now is the time to let go of your pain. Move your soul to this spooky tune. No one is immune. Leave your troubles behind and party on.